Welcome to the Economics of Platforms seminar. Today, we're honored to have Professor Michael Sullivan from University of Western Ontario talking about fee optimality in multi-sided market. Except for clarification question, we prefer you reserve the question to the end. We're going to have 40 minutes for presentation, and our discussant, Professor Mark Reisman from Boston University, will have 5 minutes for discussion. Then we'll have 15 minutes for Q&A. Michael, it's all yours.
Great. Well, thank you for the introduction. Thank you also to the organizers and Ginger and Mark for participating. So today I'll be presenting work on the optimality of fees in the US food delivery industry. For those of you who have seen my job market paper, which is called Price Controls in a Multi-Sided Market, uh, I'll know now this is a significant revision that focuses more on the efficiency of platform fees rather than specific regulations affecting that industry. But there will be some overlap, so I hope it won't be too boring for those of you who have seen that. Recent decades have witnessed a surge in the economic significance of platforms and platforms that have matched consumers with large numbers of sellers, offering consumers choice and convenience across a variety of settings. But merchants in platform markets have often criticized platforms' fee structures as unfair and inefficient. Some examples of industries in which such criticisms have been common are payment cards, say credit cards and their merchant fees, and more recently in the setting of mobile app stores with Epic Games litigation against Apple and Google. The concern in these markets is not simply that fees are too high, uh, as is a typical concern about market power in one-sided industries, but that the balance of buyers and sellers' fees is suboptimal, as this balance matters in multi-sided markets. Uh, there's some, but I would say not too much empirical work assessing the inefficiency and sources of inefficiency in digital platform fees. Uh, that's probably because data on all sides of these markets is challenging to obtain, and work remains to be done bridging the rich theory of platform pricing to data in a tractable matter. The US food delivery industry is one that's well suited to the analysis of platform fee optimality. In this setting, many US cities capped the ad valorem commissions that platforms charge to restaurants uh, from a baseline of 30% to 15%. So this provides a policy backdrop for the analysis of fee efficiency and also useful variation in estimating a model of platform markets. The primary research question I'll pose is, are platform fees biased against merchants and socially inefficient? So if we look at current platform fees and compare it to the fees that maximize social welfare, do the fees that profit maximizing platforms impose feature charges to merchants that are inefficiently high? And if they do, what are the reasons for this? Uh, with that understanding in hand, a question that naturally arises is whether commission regulation or competition are useful remedies for inefficiencies in platform markets, which of course depends on the sources of inefficiency uh, in platform fees. The approach I'll take to answering these questions involves first developing a stylized model of multi-sided pricing, in the context of which I'll identify pricing distortions, some that have already been identified in the literature and some that are introduced by features excluded from the canonical model of multi-sided pricing. I'll estimate a more detailed model of that's tailored to the food delivery industry in particular. And I'll use that model to conduct policy and welfare analysis. I won't give you a preview of the findings because it's a relatively short talk. I'll instead discuss the two major contributions that this paper makes. So the first is to quantify sources of fee inefficiency in a real-world platform market. Oh, there's by now a fairly large literature identifying fee distortions in a stylized model of platform markets that doesn't feature competition between sellers or substitutability between platform ordering and ordering directly from merchants. But recent research suggests that these factors may be important in determining what sort of fees and fee regulation are optimal. So what I'll do is not only estimate the sorts of distortions arising from market power and network externalities that the market has identified, but additionally some new distortions that haven't been emphasized in the theoretical literature. I'll also estimate the effects of platform competitions and fees to understand whether competition is useful in correcting inefficiencies in platform fees. Recent theoretical work has suggested the role of multi-homing in determining whether competition hurts or harms sellers and on the structure of fees across the two sides of the market. But most empirical work doesn't include both two-sided pricing and two-sided multi-homing, often because in many settings, for example, uh, consumers have free access to the platform in other settings because data may not be available. So the goal here will be using a model and data that both incorporate two-sided multi-homing uh, to provide a more reliable measure of the effect of competition on the fee structure in an industry that has multi-homing on both sides. So the agenda is as follows. I'll first provide that illustrative stylized model that I mentioned on the second slide. Then I'll discuss the particular setting I'm working in more detail, as well as the data that I use. I will develop the full model that I use for the empirical analysis, and then I'll estimate and use that model for counterfactual analysis. So I'll begin with the illustrative model. I won't provide all details of the model. Instead, I'll focus on some of the main conclusions. The starting point will be the so-called canonical model of Roche and Tirole 2006 that features a monopolistic platform that connects two sides of a market, I and J, charging fees to each side for platform membership. In this model, each agent on side I interacts with each agent on side J, which means that there's no business stealing. Another side J agent doesn't steal business from other side J agents on the platform. And there isn't explicitly substitution between platform interactions and direct or offline interactions. And so in these models, each user enjoys a benefit from interacting with the user on the other side. In some settings, that benefit can be interpreted as the benefit of a platform transaction relative to an off-platform transaction. Uh, but again, no explicit offline to online substitution in this model. So the additions I make to make this model more applicable to a setting like food delivery is to add cross-channel substitution. So the model will feature direct sales, S0, that depend on platform sales, S1, as well as business dealing, which means that the per merchant sales, S1 divided by J, where S1 are online sales and J is the number of merchants adopting the platform, can fall in J. So as more and more sellers join the platform, incumbent seller sales may fall, which makes merchants platform adoption strategic, unlike in the canonical model. So what I'll do in this extended model is compare the consumer fee C and merchant commission rates R, maximizing first platform profits and second total welfare, defined as platform profits plus consumer surplus plus restaurant profits. And throughout, I'll use the superscript PR to denote quantities computed under the fees maximizing platform profits, and SO for socially optimal to uh, as a superscript for quantities computed under the socially optimal fees. First, let me provide the expression for privately optimal consumer fees. So this is the fee a consumer incurs on a per transaction basis when purchasing from a seller in the platform. These fees first depend on marginal costs that the platform pays for facilitating an order. This would be in food delivery, a payment to a courier or delivery person. There's a standard market power adjustment, which should be the negative inverse semi-elasticity of sales with respect to the consumer fee that tends to push consumer fees upward. And there's a last term reflecting that the platform earns revenue on two sides of the market. So tilde BS is the effect on the platform's merchant side commission revenue from having one more sale on the platform. So if the platform makes more sales to consumers, A, it collects more per transaction commission revenue, which is R times P1, where P1 is the price charged by the restaurant from sellers. And it can also increase its commission rate because merchants are more willing to pay for a platform that offers more consumers. By contrast, the socially optimal fees satisfy the equation that I just displayed. They also depend on costs. However, rather than depending on the additional revenue that a platform can extract from sellers by virtue of having another consumer on the platform, it depends on the overall externality that another consumer exerts on merchants, which is equal to the merchant's markup from a sale on the platform. So P1 is the price that the merchant charges on a platform. Kappa bar is the restaurant or the merchant's marginal cost. So this is the standard Pigouvian pricing formula that emerges in the canonical model in most models of platform markets. Uh, there's one, however, new term in this equation that tends to make the socially optimal consumer fee higher. And it's what I'll call on the next slide the cannibalization distortion. So A here is the markup that a restaurant or a merchant earns from selling directly to the consumer, so disintermediating from the platform, going directly to the consumer. And D is a diversion ratio. In particular, it's the rate at which an increase in online ordering on the platform subtracts from merchants' offline business. So one reason why merchants like selling on platforms is they can steal business from rival restaurants, uh, including those restaurants' offline sales. So there's what the social planner internalizes that the profit maximizing platform doesn't is that as more restaurants join platforms and make sales on platforms, it reduces the profitability of restaurants offline. Uh, so this doesn't matter to the profit maximizing platform that doesn't care about offline sales as it earns no revenue from them, but it does affect restaurant profits, and thus it is something that the social planner cares about. So the idea here is that the social planner wants to raise the consumer fee, given that steering some consumers back to offline ordering benefits restaurants or merchants more generally. So I follow the approach of Whale 2010 and Tandem Right 2021 here, who uh, decompose the distortions that lead to a divergence between privately and socially optimal consumer fees. Uh, as noted, these depend on market power and cannibalization, in addition to the network externality-based distortions that uh, those paper identified. So as I noted, market power exerts upward pressure on fees. Uh, Cannibalization also exerts upward pressures, or uh, sorry, this should be upward pressure because it exerts upward pressure on socially optimal fees, and less negative pressure on this difference. Or, sorry, negative. Uh, so if you subtract, sorry, this cannibalization should be negative. I made a mistake in this math. So the idea being is that although market power means that the platform prefers charging higher fees have the social benefit of steering consumers back to off-platform ordering, and thus those two forces tend to cancel out, despite the first line of math here. And the other externalities that uh, this literature focused on are the Spence and displacement distortions. So remember, this B bar is the overall externality that another consumer order exerts on restaurants, whereas B tilde is the additional revenue that the platform collects from an additional consumer sale on the platform, a quantity that reflects marginal restaurants or merchants' willingness to pay to use the platform. So this distortion is usually positive when the inframarginal where average consumer benefit from an interaction with a user on the other side is larger than the marginal user's benefit, which is the typical case. And the displacement distortion reflects that the marginal consumer under the profit maximizing fees is more willing to pay to use the platform than the marginal consumer under socially optimal fees because fees are higher typically under the privately optimal fees due to market power. Now let me characterize optimal merchant platform adoption. So here I display the conditions for optimality for the profit maximizing platform and for the social planner. So the trade-off faced by the profit maximizing platform in lowering commissions to bring one more restaurant merchant onto the platform are first, doing so increases consumers' valuation of the platform, increases consumers' willingness to pay to use the platform, and the extent to which it does so is B tilde B on the left-hand side of the first equation. So the platform can extract more revenue from consumers if another restaurant belongs to the platform. The cost of bringing another restaurant onto the platform is that doing so requires a reduction in commission revenue. So the right-hand side is the extent to which a commission revenue is required to boost restaurant participation on the platform, which is a measure of seller-side market power, the platform's market power against merchants. So the condition for socially optimal uh, merchants platform adoption looks entirely different. So on the left-hand side, we have the consumer variety benefit from an additional merchant, which equals the average consumer benefit from an additional merchant times the number of consumers using the platform, which is S1. So you take the benefit to the average consumer of additional merchant and you multiply it by the overall number of consumers available to enjoy that benefit. On the right-hand side, you have the cost of an additional merchant on the platform. So K is a fixed cost of platform adoption. This is relevant in an industry like food delivery, in which restaurants have to install a point of sale system, train their staff to interface with the platform. Uh, as you bring more and more merchants onto a platform, it may be the less efficient merchants that enter last. So there may be an increase in the average marginal cost of a sale on the platform, which is the second term I've highlighted. Uh, but And this last term reflects, again, cannibalization. So there's a social cost of bringing another restaurant onto a platform in that it will subtract from offline restaurants' sales and thus exert a negative externality on rival restaurants. So there is no neat decomposition as there was in the consumer fee case here, but there are various forces suggesting commissions may be too high or too low. The platform uses the rate of commission to determine the level of merchants' platform adoption uh, relative to the socially optimal benchmark. Too few merchants may adopt if the platform exercises market power, if there's unaccounted for network externalities that benefit consumers, or maybe too high if merchants join primarily to steal business from rival merchants and their fixed cost of doing business. So this is the reason for socially inefficient entry in, say, Mankiw and Winston, 1986. Uh, Restaurants may join to cannibalize offline orders of other sellers, which is a related reason why adoption levels may be too high. And last, the displacement distortion is the network externality related distortion I mentioned that tends to cancel out the Spence distortion that leads to uh, overly high commissions. So it's an empirical question of whether additional uptake would be welfare enhancing. So with that basic theoretical framework out of the way, let me discuss the setting in detail and then go to the full model. Studying the US food delivery industry here, the main players at the time I studied, which was 2020 to 2021, were DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Grubhub with 50, 30, and 15% market shares. Postmates was a bit smaller and it was purchased by Uber in this period. Uh, Agents on both sides use multiple platforms. And the industry features a staggered adoption of commission caps by local governments. And so at their peak, roughly almost, I should say, one-fifth of the US population lived in an area where the ad valorem rate of commission was capped at 15% uh, from a baseline of 30%. The main prices in this industry are first, the price of food that restaurants charge on platforms, which I denote by P. This is determined by the restaurant. Uh, their platform's consumer fees, C, which are also the consumer also pays, but they are determined by the platform. The restaurant's revenue from an order on the platform equals the price it charges P times 1 minus the rate of commission it owes to the platform. And then the platform's revenue is equal to the consumer fee plus the commission revenue, which is the commission rate times the price that the restaurant charges. I use several data sets in this project. First, data on consumer choices comes from Numerator, which provides a representative consumer panel, including data on consumers' restaurant receipts for orders of all modalities. It includes about 600,000 orders a month in between 2019 and 2021. I use data characterizing the universe of restaurants available on each platform on a monthly basis from 2020 to 2021. And I complement it with data on restaurants that don't belong to platforms from a firm called Ecole. And to construct measures of platforms' consumer fees and waiting times, I scrape the web for, in particular, platforms' websites in the second quarter of 2021 in the 14 largest US metro areas uh, for platforms' fees charged on a zip code by zip code basis. And here you can see the sort of web page I scraped, which includes DoorDash's Chicago fee, which was an increase in the consumer fee charged uh, to, to consumers in Chicago in response to that city's reduction in merchant side commissions. So now I'll provide a model that tailors the more stylized model I showed earlier to the case of the food delivery industry with spatial heterogeneity and platform competition. When the first stage, platforms will set fees and commissions. Next, restaurants will, given those fees, choose which platforms to join. Restaurants will then set prices, and consumers will choose what to eat. And I'll discuss the model in backwards order. So the model features consumers I, who resides in zip code Z that partition metropolitan areas M. And each of these consumers will make capital T dining decisions each month. So the eating options are to have a homemade meal, an option I denote by J equals 0, to order directly from a restaurant J using the offline ordering modality F equals 0, or to order a meal from a restaurant J using a platform F. And consumers here will be limited to order from restaurants within a 5-mile radius of where they reside, which was DoorDash's delivery radius during the sample period. So I'll use a discrete choice model of consumer choice. So consumer I will choose simultaneously a restaurant and platform pair JF to maximize the following utility index. So psi IF here, which actually let me display at the bottom of the screen, is the consumer's utility index for platform F. It doesn't depend on the restaurant ordered. So this will depend on platform metro area fixed effects that govern the quality of the platform in a particular region. They'll depend on the platform's consumer fees, the expected waiting time for orders placed on the platform, consumer demographics, and I include a persistent consumer unobservable taste for various platforms here as well. Going back to the first line in the first equation, uh, consumers also dislike paying higher prices to restaurants, which is the alpha IP term. They differ in their taste for restaurant dining relative to home prepared food, which is what A to I governs. Consumers have distinct taste for chains versus independent restaurants, which is what phi I tau represents. So tau is the type of restaurant J, chain or independent. And consumers also have idiosyncratic tastes new for individual restaurants that do not vary across different platforms. That is, these tastes are fixed for all restaurants, whether the food is ordered on a platform or not. Consumers' taste for restaurant meals ordered directly from restaurants appears on the second line. And here the only thing that is different is There's no intrinsic platform taste Psi-IF. That's normalized to 0 for first-party ordering, and the price is different. So the price is PJ naught, and this may differ from the price that restaurants charge on platforms. So going up one stage, we have a model of restaurant price setting. Uh, so a question I'm sure many of you have by now is, if restaurants are free to set their own prices, why does the split between consumer and merchant fees matter to begin with? So typically, when there are no pricing frictions in these markets, the divide of fees is irrelevant, a situation that's typically called neutrality. There are several reasons why non-neutrality is likely to arise in this industry. So platforms here penalize merchants in terms of visibility within their apps for having too large gaps between their online and offline prices. This is something DoorDash, for example, has admitted to. There's marketing literature that suggests consumers dislike large online-offline price gaps. So there may be brand image concerns about charging two different prices across ordering modalities. And some literature on uniform and suboptimal pricing on platforms suggests that there may be limits to managers' time, which would lead managers perhaps to set a constant price across ordering modalities, or the managers simply have difficulty optimizing. So the model I use for now, and I'll discuss how I'm planning on improving it, is one in which restaurants set prices for first-party orders PJ naught, and on each platform F, PJF, to maximize profits, which are markup minus kappa. So kappa here is a marginal cost times sales. Marginal cost can differ between platform orders and direct orders. Uh, with the exception that restaurants here imperfectly internalize commissions R, which is what this var theta symbol before R denotes. So this would range between 0 and 1. 1 would mean frictionless pricing. 0 would imply merchants don't internalize commission. Uh, Maybe they don't want to have a gap between online and offline prices, or they're uh, unable to optimize appropriately. So I think probably a better thing to do, which I'm working on now, is to explicitly include a penalty for gaps between online and offline prices in the objective function. So going up one stage, we have restaurants platform adoption decision. So I model this as a simultaneous move entry game, in which restaurants join a set of platforms script GJ. So this can be any arbitrary set of the available four platforms, including the null set of remaining entirely offline. And restaurants choose this set to maximize their expected variable profits in the downstream stages of the game. Uh, Fixed costs of platform adoption, K, which can vary across the particular subset of platforms joined, across metropolitan areas M, across types of restaurants, which is tau chains or independents. The choice disturbance is private information, which means that restaurants don't know what their rivals will take, which is why they take an expectation uh, over rivals' choices, an expectation that an equilibrium will be correct. So this choice disturbance here represents misperceptions of profitability from platform adoption and non-pecuniary motives that managers may have for platform adoption. And the first stage is quite standard. It will simply be that platforms set their fees on the consumer and merchant sides to maximize profits. I'll now discuss estimation of the model. So I'll estimate the consumer preference model using maximum likelihood on data from the second quarter of 2021, using the numerator consumer panel with data on the 14 large metro areas for which I scrape records of platform fees. So the identification here will come from within metropolitan area variation in fees. So I specify platform metro area fixed effects and exploit variation within metros created in large part due to commission caps to estimate the model. Restaurant marginal costs has two steps. So there's this var fee parameter that governs the extent to which there are frictions in restaurant pricing. So I specify a moment condition to estimate these, that restaurants' cost shocks for preparing a food item are uncorrelated with whether there's a local commission cap or not. And what this moment condition does is match the correlation between prices and commission cap status. So what I see is that in places with a commission cap, there's a slight reduction in restaurants' prices, but not as much as you would expect in a model in which restaurants fully internalize commissions, which suggests some sort of pricing friction that would give rise to non-neutrality. So once I've estimated this VAR fee parameter at 0.72, I recover restaurants' marginal costs from pricing first order conditions. Using those, I can compute restaurant markups, and I find in places without caps, restaurants earn. Uh, this is the gap between the markup that a restaurant earns from first-party sales and platform orders. So restaurants earn higher markups when they sell directly to the consumer because they don't pay commission. They earn markups that are $2.38 more from first-party sales in places without caps, but this gap shrinks where caps that reduce commission are introduced to only 73 cents. So caps make restaurants relatively more profitable on platforms. I estimated the model of restaurants' platform adoption using GMM to match patterns of restaurants' platform adoption. And what's going to be important later is that there are diminishing uh, fixed costs to joining more and more platforms of multi-homing. So this plot shows for chains and independents the mean fixed cost from joining a set of platforms with one, two, three, or four platforms. So by the time a restaurant joins two platforms, the costs have basically entirely leveled off. They're even diminishing marginal cost after joining only one platform. I recover platform's marginal cost for orders using first order conditions for optimality of consumer fees. I find interquartile range of these of DoorDash's delivery costs between about $7 and $9, which lines up what it reports to pay drivers. And here I never assume commissions are optimally set. So platforms advertise national 30% commission rates. Uh, it's dubious that these would be profit maximizing in each individual market, so I don't use first order conditions for those. Now let me describe the counterfactual analysis. So there will be two parts here. In the first, I'll assess the sort of commission regulation that cities introduced in practice that limit commissions and allow consumer fee responses. After that, I'll explicitly compute socially and privately optimal platform fees. I'll conduct analysis at the county level, which gives me more variation across geography and is more computationally tractable. But let me focus here on first the effects of commission caps that restrict commissions to a particular level while allowing consumer fees to respond. First, I'd like you to look at the very left-hand side of this plot, which provides results for a 50% commission cap. So these reduce total welfare, the black line, while leading to a restaurant gain, which was a part of the intention of these caps. While also leading to consumer losses due to fee increases, as I'll show you on the next slide. So although 15% commission caps are welfare reducing, moderate commission reductions between 20 and 30% actually boost total welfare. However, not by much. Notice the benefit per order in the baseline is only about 10 cents here. And the reason that you can see consumer surplus is more or less flat or slightly increases in this 20 to 30% region is that as commissions are reduced, so as you go from the dotted 30% line leftward to levels with lower commissions, consumer fees increase, as you see in the leftmost panel, but a higher share of restaurants join a platform. So consumers have more variety available within food delivery platforms. So in the third panel, you see the share of orders placed on a platform as opposed to being placed directly from a restaurant. This is a measure of how attractive platforms are relative to offline ordering. You can see for slight commission reductions, although consumers are paying higher fees, they're more likely to order from a platform because more restaurants belong to the platform. However, the plot I showed first aggregated across all counties in the sample. And as it turns out, there is substantial cross-county variation in the level of commission that first optimizes total welfare, which is this first Boscombe Whiskers plot, as well as platform profits. So although the commission rate, the regulated commission rate that maximizes platform profits is generally higher than that maximizing total welfare, there's substantial variation in this amount, which naturally raises the question, what explains that variation? So here I'll define delta J as a measure of the gap between the commission maximizing platform profits and the one maximizing social welfare. So delta J is a measure of the extent to which profit maximizing commissions are excessive or distorted upwards. So based on the stylized model, there are a few factors I hypothesize as being relevant for this level of distortion. So first is cannibalization, the share of orders that divert to first-party ordering when platforms are eliminated, which governs the substitutability of, or is a measure of the substitutability of offline and offline ordering. So when cannibalization is higher, it's it, it's it tends to be that commissions are too high, and reducing them leads to consumer fee increases that induce consumers to stop ordering on platforms and begin ordering directly from restaurants, which provides a positive externality for restaurants. So next, I reduce commission by 1% and measure the increase in the fixed costs that restaurants incur. So if these fixed costs from attracting more restaurants to a platform are higher, uh, having higher commissions is a good thing because it prevents restaurants from joining platforms to steal business from rivals while uh, while incurring fixed costs that are reduce social welfare from doing so. I also measure the effect of reducing commission by 1% on the number of restaurants that joins platforms and thus provides variety benefits to consumers. So if these variety benefits are very strong, and the platform doesn't internalize them perfectly, it's likely that commissions will be too high. There could be social benefits from reducing commissions to benefit consumers. Let me just focus on those first ones in the interest of time. So I find that the expected coefficients all hold, uh, and the cannibalization is the factor that has the highest R squared or the most explanatory power in explaining this gap between privately and socially optimal platform commissions. The natural question arises, which is what explains then variation in cannibalization. So regress cannibalization on a variety of factors. And the one that explains it most is just how many people order restaurants from restaurants in a particular area. So when restaurant ordering is high in baseline, the new sales generated on platforms are more likely to subtract from sales that restaurants would have made otherwise. Uh, Let me, in the interest of time, discuss. I think I only have a couple of minutes left. So I would like to go to the competition results. So it's ambiguous in two-sided markets whether uh, competition tends to benefit merchants or hurt merchants. The idea being that more intense competition could primarily incur on the consumer side. These markets typically feature seesaw effects whereby decreases in consumer fees tend to boost fees on the merchant side. So it's not clear that competition would be a remedy for the bias in platform fees against merchants that I just documented. So what I do here is compute average platform fees under both the social optimum, a world in which platforms compete, and a world in which platforms maximize their joint profits. So focusing on this bottom table, you can see that the socially optimal consumer fee is $3.42. It's slightly higher, but not dramatically higher in the world in which platforms maximize their individual profits. And it rises substantially in a world in which there's no pricing competition. Platforms instead maximize their joint profits. Uh, Restaurant commissions are far too low, high under competition from a social standpoint. So they're 34%, whereas the social planner would charge only about 16.7%. But if we eliminate pricing competition, restaurant commissions, in fact, fall. So competition tends to slightly increase commissions rather than subtract from them. So the main reason for this is relates to a pattern of multi-homing, which is that they're cost complementarities for a restaurant to multi-home. So when platform F joins uh, when platform F reduces its commissions, more restaurants join F. And once a restaurant has joined F, it's less costly to join a new platform F prime than if the restaurant started from a point in which it wasn't on any platform because of the cost complementarities of joining multiple platforms. So this means that when platform F reduces commissions, it makes rival platforms have an easier job of recruiting restaurants. So thus there's a positive spillover on rival platforms from platforms F's commission reduction. And if platforms were to merge and maximize their joint profits, they would internalize this positive spillover and reduce commission slightly to to increase the share of restaurants that join all of the platforms collectively. And on this slide, I show that by assessing a world without cost complementarities. If we're to get rid of those, then going from competition to joint profit maximization would lead to a slight increase in restaurant commissions rather than the reduction that we observe in a world with cost complementarities. So here I'll display a few points, leading conclusions. Given that I'm already at time, I'll stop. I didn't have time to go over anything. So if there's any point that's particularly interesting here in the Q&A, I'm happy to talk about it more. But I'll hand it over to Mark now. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Mark?
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. So I'm a big fan of this paper, or this line of work. I'm not sure where this paper stands relative to the paper that I saw, a year ago or whatever. But it's a really, it's a compelling model. It's got amazing data. It's really heavily informed by theory. Like in this version of the paper, there's way more tied into the kind of theoretical literature and two-sided markets, and I think that's really nice. Two things that really stand out for me in this paper is I think it's maybe the most or one of the most compelling empirical papers on multi-homing. You really get to see, the merchants reaching consumers through these different platforms. And it really, especially I think in the revision, really highlights disintermediation in a way that I don't think even in the theory literature, we've always acknowledged this disintermediation, but it really shows how important it is in understanding this market. I was curious how you thought about multi-homing. I mean, in the model, consumers always look at all the platforms. They kind of automatically signed up for all the platforms, and the merchants choose which one. So it's actually an unusual setup where, you think of payment cards, consumers pick one card and merchants sign up for all, or the advertisers appear in every magazine and the consumer picks one. But here it's the consumers that are everywhere, and the merchants are choosing which one to be on. But in the end, it's the consumers that pick where the transaction happens. And in that sense, it's the consumers that are single homing, and the merchants who always have the offline option are sort of the multi-homers in that sense. So I wonder how you thought about it, especially as we like those results about how when you sort of competition seems to really benefit the consumers. To me, sounded like it's really the consumers that are the ones that are single homing, kind of at the crucial choice of where the transaction goes. I'm very interested in multi-homing in general. Actually, I don't know how people in this audience feel, but whenever someone asks me like what's something really new that came out of the two-sided market literature, I always start with the results on multi-homing that I find very kind of compelling and in some ways surprising. I'd love to see a histogram of how many restaurants are signed up for how many platforms. I didn't see that histogram. I'm sure you've computed it sometime. And I think something you could maybe do further with this paper is, I think there's a section that kind of looks at the benefit of adopting the first platform, but then there's kind of the adoption of the second, third, or fourth platform. And I imagine that even without any cost, some platform could drive down your revenue. Like a restaurant could adopt a platform that maybe has high fees, and that could actually be bad for them. And I'll just say all my comments are in the spirit of, like, I know you have referees and editors, and you should prioritize their comments, and I suspect you have a page limit as well. And so I should take account of that in making my comments. But I'm not going to. I'm just going to add stuff to your list and let you, deal with it. So this kind of like analysis of multi-homing, I thought was something that you could do that the rest of us in some ways could not do. I'll just say, maybe I'll finish here. The part of motivation for the regulation that Michael evaluates is this, I feel like the mayors came in and they were like 30%, you're taking 30% from my local restaurants, like that's just too high. And they had this kind of knee-jerk reaction, like, okay, I'm gonna regulate. And Michael shows that actually was welfare reducing. But one thing actually, from the perspective of the city government, I think they probably wouldn't account for platform welfare. So I actually wondered if you could add to your list there what you do, but calculate just the local welfare, which I think just looking at the lines would make their kind of actions a little more defensible. And I guess at some level, you know, the market has 4 players in it. It's not a terrible market structure from our perspective as IO economists, but still it doesn't seem to be delivering, you know, price equal marginal cost, or it seems to have there's still large margins, and you talk a lot about market power in the paper, and I wonder at some level, like, what is the problem? Because I think you know, you sort of at the end are arguing that competition doesn't really make the market better. And so if competition doesn't make it better, then is the problem really market power, or is this one of these cases where sort of competition in two-sided markets just doesn't seem to work very well, and then that really is a rationale for regulation? And in that sense, even if the mayors maybe picked the wrong number, they seemed like they were onto something. So yeah, be curious like what your thoughts are.